These hot days are going to be the death of me, I think.
It's supposed to be hot for the next 2 weeks.
Is it really? I mean, it is August, so that makes sense. But we got so used to like a kind of a global cooling that it was, which I know sounds weird, but supposedly we had a global cooling. It's known as the grand solar minimum. I don't know if you guys seen anything on that, which I always thought it was global warming, but it's more actually grand solar minimum. I had an interesting training about pregnancy and birth that I wanted to share with you guys since we were on this. Shoot, it's not signing the right one. We finished the class with this image, kind of the 9 months of a baby and the stages of labor and whatnot. So I kind of wanted to revisit some of that with, the first stage of labor. My wife ended up having to go into labor for 24 hours last year. And it's because she got that shot in the back so you don't feel all the pain when you're giving birth. But you couldn't feel when to push. So because of that, it kind of messed her up. Anyway, I wanted to show you these pictures on babies. And do you guys have any questions about?
Well, since I missed the first few classes, was there any homework? I know about the Genogram.
That's the first major assignment.
Okay.
And then I am trying to get it so that you have, what do you call it? The, it's making me verify my password now. Like a discussion board. I'm trying to get those to work, and they're not working great right now. So how are you guys liking D2L? Anybody used to the old one and now you're having to do this one?
I feel like D2L is a bit, I mean, I got it now, but at first it was a little confusing.
It was very confusing. Yeah. Did you do it in summer class?
No. The first day of class, my first time using it.
Okay. It was a little bit stressful. Oh gosh, I'm still struggling with this. But at least it is kind of working.
Like, actually have other sites, and sometimes it is so bad that when like 30 people use it at the same time, it just crashes.
Seriously?
Yes.
So what do they call those in Russia?
Moodle.
Oh, really?
Yes.
And it's no good, huh?
Yeah. It is just as bad as it sounds.
9, 5, 6. Okay. So I got some Creighton Method pictures that I wanted to show you guys. And I also was going to do a genogram. So has anybody ever seen a genogram? It's almost kind of sort of like a family tree. So anybody done a family tree before?
My grandmother did.
Oh, really? Okay. I'm sorry that it's still asking me for, this is good. We have all these verifications for our accounts, but sometimes it takes forever to get into something. All right, so if these photos actually back themselves up, I have the entire Creighton Method training saved on here for you guys. And it's about knowing your fertility and when you're actually fertile and making sure that if you don't want a baby, to not have the baby then. That's pretty much what it comes down. Here it is. Okay, sweet. So,
pretty much like similar to your ovarian cycle?
it is, and it's okay, here it is. Now let me know though if you guys can see it, because this is on a different display. Is it even showing? So you can Google it. There's some research on this about the Creighton Method that's, oh gosh, I have to watch from here because it won't show me here. So if you went to the Creighton Method and Googled it, we did this training the other night. So I decided to take, am I going the wrong way? I'm probably going the wrong way. That was when, that's the right way. Okay. So it's basically, yeah, you're right. The way that you described it, knowing your cycle, but this is kind of like detailing how and when to know your cycle. And I'm also going to show you our genogram and eco map, but essentially you want to have 3 generations. So grandma, grandpa, then any of your like aunts and uncles, if you've got several, or if it's just like, your mom and dad, and then your family, and if you have like brothers, sisters, cousins, anybody here have cousins or nieces or nephews or, okay. And the reason we do that kind of starts from here is genetically, we want to know where we came from. Like you want to know if you, as a social worker, I want to know if my client has a likelihood of addiction history in the family, like genetics of addiction or alcoholism or mental health challenges or mental health good things. I try to add good things in there, like mom and dad stayed married 50 years, brother graduated from college, sister, so like good things too. But usually as a social worker, they're coming to us for a problem, so they want to know like how to solve a problem, and it helps to get a full genetic history. Sometimes they don't know, like sometimes they're like, dude, I was adopted, I have no idea where my genes are from. But it does help to know like the environment they grew up in, like how was their foster care family, how are they treated, did they jump foster care homes. So anyway, before we get to that, we'll get to these genetics. And this, I went the wrong way again. So I just wanted you guys at least familiar with this one also. We don't have to go in depth like I did, because this was an hour long training. I wish they weren't live photos. They do both live photos and not live photos. So I do like that this shows that it's for both achieving pregnancy and for avoiding pregnancy. So timing conception, you can know. So I was married December of 2019. COVID hit 2 months later. We had a baby in June. So I'm 42. So I had my first baby at 42, my second baby at 43. I'm an old dad, so that'll probably go on my genogram. I had a girl last year and a boy this year, but we were able to like kind of like track when we had the baby, which was cool. We knew her cycle. So achieving pregnancy, avoiding pregnancy. How many pictures did that freaking take? I think it's just loading the same one. So hold on a second. Does anybody know how to get out of presenter mode? Yeah, like how can you show it to like show only what it's showing on my screen, so that way I can like look at it and you guys see what I'm looking at. So right now I have to look at it like you are. Oh, right at the bottom. So do you? Yeah, you're welcome to try. It would. I feel like it would make it easier. I have nothing to hide from you guys, so I think. Right. Okay, that makes it play. That's true on PowerPoint, and I see what you're saying there. But let's see here. Maybe I have to be in that screen to go backwards. Oh, I think that they were missing a room. So, all right. So basically, we were doing this. This is an important thing to know, which I'm sure you guys already know. Is males are always fertile. If you're 40, 50, 60, 70, a man can have a freaking baby. So that's important to know. If you don't want a baby, no, males are always fertile. So this is also kind of like a spiritual, infused spirituality, but Creighton Method is also factual and based off scientific research. This shows the vas deferens. This is what carries the sperm to the gosh, I'm blanking on it. The prostate regulates like the acidity of the sperm and like the mucus. Sperm needs mucus to live in to be able to go from the male to the female, and that's partly why they started tracking things this way for women are at most times infertile. So there's usually only, I don't know, what were you guys told growing up in biology class? How long do they say women are fertile for?
Up to 45, I guess it is like the last time.
So like 15 days after you have your period, you're supposed to have at least a 24-hour window, but that's it. So that's partly why it is hard for some people to get pregnant, because you only have 24 hours out of 31 days in a month. So what is that? Like 1 out of 31 chance, you know. But sperm can live inside of the system for 3 to 5 days. So that's something important to keep in mind. So that's why there are like 5 days. And if you are tracking it that way, it's important to know. When you're born, you are born with all like, I think it's like 1 million eggs. Women are born with 1 million. It's a ton of eggs. So I remember my wife making a big deal that our daughter, we found out she was a girl at 8 weeks. You can take a blood test and know it's female. And so at that time, if you're having a baby girl, she is carrying all of your grandchildren at that time, if that makes sense. So like that's kind of like exciting. You know, I've only had kids for literally a year and 2 months, so this is all new to me. If I'm tired or yawning, that's why. Like they wake us up all freaking night long and make you see why you want to. Like if you're doing it without different types of birth control, why you want to find ways to know about the systems. So there's one important thing is that like the eggs are actually held in the ovary. So like each month they say, the woman who was trained us said that like it can be very not painful for somebody and extremely painful for somebody else when you like actually release and then shed the uterine lining. So when you release an egg, it often like rotates like from that side, then to this side and that side, and then they release and have to get over to here. Like somehow the egg knows to get into those little fallopian tubes. And often the sperm can come all the way up and then fertilize right here. And that was the picture that we were showing the other day, which I want to go back to that too, if I can. Because this was out of our book, the exact same picture of the fallopian tubes that show when you are fertilized, it's here, you know, and then you already start doubling, then quadruple, then you have 8 cells, and by 16 to 30, or at 3 days, you already have 16 to 32 cells. So it keeps on doubling. Usually the way birth control works is that it makes this not attached to the uterine wall. So if you're taking like the pill, which is very normal nowadays in the US, I think they prescribe it to you as early as 14 or 15 for like bloating or acne or irregular cycles. What it ultimately does is make it so that, and I didn't know this growing up, you know, and I grew up kind of like in a big Catholic family and things of that nature. But I always thought that it meant that you would not conceive, but you actually do conceive about here, but then the egg can't attach and just kind of flows out with the period. So there actually is conception that way. And that kind of blew my mind because, you know, knowing what we know now, they said that somehow the eggs are still able to like find, that's the example she gave. Somebody had one fallopian tube that was cut off or blocked, but the egg released from this side actually knew how to come over here and go to that fallopian tube. So there's almost like intelligence at, you know, even before the conception part, which is kind of mind blowing. But again, there is ways to track the, you have estrogen and you have, there's like stuff that females make that help with both the conception and then help the egg to attach. And that's the menstruation cycle. This is the ovulation cycle. So I wish it wasn't a live photo because that's actually kind of annoying. But when you have, in the ovary, it's released, and then you're giving off the hormones and pheromones so that the sperm does know where to go if you're looking for a child. So this is the changes of the lining of the uterus. She was talking about the progesterone. That's what I'm looking for. So progesterone actually tells your body not to shed uterine lining, which is your period. So you do want to have enough progesterone when you do conceive. So like the natural cycle, it will show you how much progesterone you have inside of you and makes it safe space for ovulation and conception, and then for the egg to attach. So ovulation only occurs one day in each cycle. And so that was the 24 hours I'm talking about. Like a woman is only fertile for 1 out of 31 days. But because sperm can live in the system 3 to 5 days, you have 5, really 6 days that you can become pregnant. And that's like 20% chance then, 1 out of 5. So if you're trying to get pregnant, the egg only lives 12 to 24 hours if it's not fertilized. So it'll just flush out of the system, natural cycle, and then you shed the uterine lining, and then you grow a new uterine lining and things of that nature. And same with the men. The sperm dies in so many days, and then the sperm is regenerated. And they said if you are trying to conceive, you actually want to try to conceive every other day, because if you're going every day, you'll have like not as strong of sperm content. So this was something we were trying to have babies. We were trying to have kids right when we got married. We thought we were so old we couldn't have babies, and we were wrong. We had lots of kids really fast. We had 2 kids in 10 and a half months. And it was like, oh dude, we got to stop this now. But like the teaching is, for spirituality, it's to add communication. Yes, there's condoms. Yes, there's the pill, but those aren't always effective. And when you do it in a way that does not have the contraception, it increases the communication between the couples. It kind of like is a way that you can communicate better and say when you do or not want to connect. So this is another key important thing, because I always thought mucus was just like snot from your nose, but men, you have several mucous membranes. So we've got it in our eyes and our nose and our mouth, and then in our reproductive area. So both men and women, and the sperm dies when there's no mucus. So the whole point of this Creighton Method is what it's called, is tracking and checking the mucus. So sperm without mucus dies within hours. Sperm with good mucus can live 3 to 5 days. So that's kind of where the fertility stuff. I thought this was more detailed than what our book gave us and would be helpful. And again, you can look it up. Creighton is a university in Omaha, Nebraska, so that's why it's called the Creighton Method. And they've done the research and kind of backed this up with science. So for those, and I won't go in detail every single slide because I'll cut it off here, but the hormone estrogen reaches a peak the day before ovulation. So again, estrogen is normal in a woman's body and is kind of like at the highest point right before you ovulate, and then progesterone begins to take over. Because if you are fertilized, if a woman is fertilized by a male sperm, progesterone then tells you to not shed the uterine lining. So you want to have that. Now, if you have the pill kind of always telling you to do your progesterone or estrogen, that's kind of where the pill is probably, has anybody ever looked it up, like 95% effective? So you still can get pregnant 5 out of 100 times with the pill. The pill doesn't always work. You know what I mean? So like that, even with the same thing with a condom, they say it maybe is 99 because it can break or it can be put on improperly, or you can get pregnant a myriad of ways. So knowing the cycle just makes it 100% more specific. So the hormone estrogen stimulates the cervical crypts to produce mucus. And those are the little things that they showed in the picture. They might have another picture coming up here. And that's pretty much what the sperm lives in. So this is a view of when there is, you can see when there is mucus, there's like a straight line for the sperm to swim through. When there is no mucus, it's almost like a freaking forest that you can't get through. So the sperm can't get to the egg if it's a day without mucus. But if the female has mucus, then there is fertility that day. So that's like something, again, that I was enlightened on, is I always thought mucus was just snot from your freaking nose. But clearly it plays a huge role in fertilization. Like you have to have the mucus to become fertilized, to have a baby. If you don't want a baby, obviously the dry days are way better. So type E and type G mucus, that's the fertile days. Those would be the non-fertile days, if I remember correctly. And so essentially it's getting to tracking the mucus. That's a picture of cervix, because it does only open up for one day, literally. So that's why there's 24 hours, changes in the flow of cervical mucus around the time of ovulation. And that's, again, the point of the Creighton method is to track the mucus. So peak 4 is one of the days when they say there's the most mucus and it's closed. And then on peak day, that's the day you can become pregnant. That's one day out of the month. It's open, peak +1, it's closing, and then by peak +4, it's closed. So you can no longer, that's just the natural cycle of the body. So the scientific evidence for the biological valve, there's showing the amount of mucus there is right before peak day. And then there's only like those 4 days out of the 30. So most of the days throughout the month, it's just right there, which is almost nothing. So basically they're teaching you, if you would like to have a child, to get fertility depends on good sperm, good eggs, and good mucus. And if you are missing one of those, you can't have a baby. So that's when they go to like in utero. If you guys ever heard of like the test tube babies or in utero, and that basically is where they inject into the system and maybe even fertilize in a test tube and then put it into you so you can grow the child. So this is where, the early human development. So she was showing releasing the egg, the flow where it usually goes, and then when there is a period, washing out of the system, and then starting back up for the next month again. So then they already jumped to 16 weeks of age. So that's where we are on our PowerPoint, and kind of the baby development throughout there. So any questions at this point where we are on this shows like at 16 weeks. All right, so 2 to 7 weeks, you're an embryo. You get about 90% of like your liver, your kidney, your brain, your heartbeat, and that's from 2 to 7 weeks. So at 7 weeks, you have all of that stuff. Critical period, the embryo is most vulnerable to the environment. You can have most miscarriages about then. Then you become a fetus. So that's from week 8. You can live outside of the womb at like 23. The refinement and growth of basic structures last 2 months. You're getting really fat as a baby. Like our baby was 5 pounds at week 36, 6 pounds at week 37, and 7 pounds at week 38. So you gain like a pound every week at the end. You grow real fast. And then actually he's 15 pounds at 12 weeks right now. And our daughter's only 21 pounds at 14 months, which is like 52 weeks or 60 weeks. So he's catching up, and he's actually gotten more breast milk because like we got a better pump and a way to deliver. So he's grown super fast, whereas she got more formula and she's like tiny. It's kind of funny to see the difference. But at 24 weeks, you have a chance to live outside of the womb early, which actually our boy was early. And then our daughter was more full term at 39 weeks. So they start testing that after your last period before the pregnancy is week 1. And you're usually not conceiving until week 2 or 3. So there's no baby until week 2 or 3, which is when the whole cycle begins. We were talking in the last class about the placenta. So that's how mom feeds the baby and how like all the blood and like different things get to the baby through the umbilical cord. So that connects the embryo to the placenta. And then the amnion bag is where the baby's floating. It actually broke on my wife last year, so we had to go in and kind of force the baby out. Abortion is the spontaneous or induced ending of a pregnancy. 75% of spontaneous abortions occur in the first 12 weeks. Not all vaginal bleeding is a miscarriage. Social worker. So if you are a social worker, you have to play a supportive role. Like that's important. Separate your personal from professional values. If you don't agree with some of the stuff going on, you don't want to work in an agency that has to provide that support. Women have less regret and emotional problems when the choice is not forced, obviously. So the stages of labor, we went before the baby comes out before the placenta. So the first 12 hours, cervix kind of opens to about, I think that's 10 centimeters. Because then the head goes through as a cone. So like the skull collapses and the baby comes out as a cone head. It's kind of funny looking. Baby's delivered, and then the placenta is delivered at the end. So it could take 10 minutes. It could take 3 hours. My wife on the first baby took 24 hours. She was more like 3 on the second baby. So it is hard work. They even have me like hold her leg. Like they wait for the contractions. And they're like, all right, now hold her leg. And you had to hold it up. And then she had to push with the contractions. So luckily, the boy was faster than the girl. Recovery time. So they made me hold the baby like you do skin to skin. And there's a lot of good bacteria on the baby. So you don't want to wash the baby right away. You want to keep that like white looking stuff on them. It's mucus. It's nasty. I don't know if you guys have seen pictures of newborns. Like, you want to keep that stuff on there, though. It's good for them. And there's research that shows it helps brain development and it helps like just your whole, what do they call it? Your gut, like digestive, like you want that stuff. If you wash it off right away, you don't have good microflora. I think that's what it's called. The cone-shaped head is because you have to go through that 10 centimeters. So the baby's head kind of like collapses and then one arm comes out and the other arm. But the dude was like this, I think I have pictures of them. I'll try to show you guys. They're tiny when they're born. Some complications are frequent vomiting. They call that hyperemesis gravidarum. Possible vaginal bleeding that can lead to spontaneous abortion and early pregnancy. Vaginal bleeding later on could be placental previa. That's what we had, where like the placenta moves away from connecting to the mom's uterus, and she freaked out that she lost the baby. We went in and they were like, oh, there's the heartbeat, there's the baby, you're okay. It just had the placenta previa is what it's called. When the placenta separates from the wall of the uterus and then it reattaches. Toxemia, so that could be protein in the urine, eclampsia. There's several things. So like the doctors check you all the time. My wife is now 35, so they call her a geriatric pregnancy, and that pissed her off because she's not that old. She's 35. It's old for pregnancy, but it's not that old. I'm 43. That might be geriatric, but not 35. Intrauterine growth, retardation, and then also gestational diabetes. So she had to take this blood sugar test where you drink 300 grams. It looks like the McDonald's orange drink. You guys ever had that before? She said it tastes like the McDonald's orange drink, but it's nasty. And then they see how fast your body digests the sugar. And then they said she was too high on one of them, so she actually had to go back and do like another that was 600 grams of sugar instead of 3. It was like way too much, but she was able to pass the test and didn't have gestational diabetes. So ideal age, here it is again, 18 to 35, biological age is best for pregnancy. Most people are having babies though at 35, 36, 37, and 38 in America. Like I had a lot of friends. I was born in 1978. Most of my friends waited until 2017 to have children, like when they were freaking 39, which is fine, but this is, your ideal age. Nutrition, women need an extra 300 calories a day. At first, we were joking with my wife that she could eat like an extra pound of ice cream and a few donuts, but you really only need like an extra. I think it says 300 calories is like an apple or two. Maternal stress and illness. So you want if mom is stressed out, it passes on to the baby. So if you're living in a like dangerous environment or there's domestic violence going on, your body produces what's called cortisol, and that can be passed to the uterus. So it can, or passed into the baby in the uterus. So also multiple gestations are riskier to have younger gestational ages. Like if you have twins, and if you have, you'll have twins early usually. So it'll be at like 30 or 35 weeks because you're so big. Sexually transmitted diseases can also be transferred, so that's important to know. For example, a cold sore, like herpes virus, can be transferred if mom has herpes, which can be a cold sore, and it can be transferred all 4 ways. So, like from mouth to vagina to mouth to any mucous membrane, the baby can also get it. So, a lot of times they'll do a C-section. Because if there is a herpes outbreak during the birth, it can be a dangerous situation for the kid. So in that case, they'll usually just do the C-section and cut open so you don't have the herpes virus. Drug use is another one. So the tardigen is any agent that causes a birth defect, increases chance of a miscarriage, low birth weight. Drug use can also cause addicted infants. You can have difficulty actively engaging in their environment. And we were talking about in my previous class, like the NICU in Cincinnati is filled up with kids that have addiction to heroin, because we have a pretty bad heroin epidemic. What cities are you? I know you're from which city in Russia, though?
St.
Is there any opioids?
What?
Like heroin there?
I think the most common is weed. It is
Okay,
illegal, but it is a drug, and
Right.
There is kind of a problem with it.
Okay. What cities are you guys from?
I'm
Detroit? Okay. Oh yeah, Gary, Indiana. I've been there, I think. I at least know the song, of course. And then which city are you?
I'm like 25 miles outside of Detroit.
Okay. Is there any opioid? Kind of close to Oakland College, but not really.
Yeah, actually, Oakland and Rochester.
Yeah.
My sister, we live about 15 minutes from there. She's up
Okay. So any opioids epidemic in your cities at all? No.
And when it comes like an epidemic, what makes you think that it is not it is an epidemic, not just a problem? Why?
There's a video I'm going to show you in our class, and we may watch it in here. It's called 7 Days of Heroin in Cincinnati. There's 120 overdoses in the city of Cincinnati during that week, I think, or 180 overdoses and like 25 deaths. So that's kind of like an epidemic where it's just like every day you're getting the cops called to somebody with passed out in a gas station with a needle in their arm, and you're like, this is a problem. So babies that get that also become addicted to heroin. So they have to be born in the NICU. They're usually shaken because they want heroin, but you can't give it to them because it's bad. And then in the NICU, they wean the baby off of those drugs. So
the baby comes out shaking.
Yes. I can pull up a video if you guys want me to, but it's kind of sad. Yeah. You do?
Yeah.
All right, we can. It is disturbing. It's like, let's see if I can type it in here. Shaking baby from heroin. If I spell it right, I don't even know if I can spell it right. Sometimes I can't spell. I hate this presenter view. It's so confusing to me. Let's see if I'll just do the whole screen over there. Is there a short one? Because pretty much everything mom takes into the system, the baby takes. So they have no control. That's why Child Protective Services may get involved at different times.
We also believe in putting people first by treating them right is worth upping the benefits without upping the price. Introducing Placenta Max. Now with unlimited premium data that can't slow down based on how
Can we
much
skip
smartphone data you use.
this?
Plus, get Netflix on us and taxes and fees included. You won't find this with the other guys. In fact, you pay more and get less. Right now, a zero cost to switch. Pay to bring your phone. We'll pay it off. Only at T-Mobile.
Didn't T-Mobile have a data breach and they gave away all your info?
America's heroin problem is getting worse. There's a new report from the CDC that says in just 6 years, heroin use has risen 150% to more than 500,000 Americans. And
It's a lot.
over a decade, use by women alone is up 100%. Elaine Quijano now on the most innocent victims of drug abuse.
This newborn was in a neonatal intensive care unit at Tufts Medical Center in Boston for 3 weeks. The jerking movements are symptoms of opiate addiction. He was given morphine to ease his withdrawal. His 32-year-old mother asked not to be identified.
I felt guilty and I felt bad, but I felt like that it was my fault because of my drug use.
She says she became hooked on Percocet at 17 after she had her wisdom teeth removed. For the last 6 years, she's been taking Subutex, the medication to keep her off prescription painkillers, but it is still an addictive narcotic. Dr. Jonathan Davis,
So that's
chief of
actually-
newborn medicine at
Shit,
Tufts.
sorry.
When you look at these.
It's also known as Suboxone.
Very, very irritable, inconsolable, they're crying, they have tremors.
How fast did the problem grow?
It's growing really fast. We're very, very concerned, and with a sevenfold increase in the last 7 or 8 years with keeping babies in the hospital much longer. The average cost of a baby who goes for withdrawal is approximately $53,000 in the United States compared to only 1,000 or 2 with a normal newborn.
Melissa Morales, who has battled a heroin addiction, was on methadone treatment when she found out she was pregnant. Her daughter, weighing just over 2 pounds at birth, went through withdrawal.
When you saw her like that, what was going through your mind?
Regret.
A lot of regret.
Jane Ellis is now 13 months old. She will be monitored for years. Doctors are just beginning to study the long-term effects of babies born as opiate addicts. Elaine Quijano, CBS News, Boston.
So, let's see if I can get it to shut up. There it goes. So yeah, there's a lot of issues with being born addicted to heroin, so to speak. And alcohol, however, is one of the biggest. So it says alcohol is the biggest preventable cause of developmental disabilities. So in like the 70s and 80s, they thought you could have a drink or two, but now it's pushed to where like, if you know you're pregnant, no alcohol, not even like the mouthwash, because like one beer or even just like one shot and say the baby's like that big, it like messes the baby up, you know, if it got like flushed through the system. So now they say no alcohol, no cigarettes. Those are the preventable ones. Important to have prenatal testing. Sometimes you don't know you're pregnant for 7 weeks. Like that's pretty typical. There's some women that don't know they're pregnant for 7 months and they just thought they were like gaining a lot of weight. So it's important to get tested and know drug testing, ultrasound, identify anomalies that might require ethical decisions. whether to terminate the pregnancy. So some people, I use China as an example though, because like, you guys ever heard of the one-child policy? So in the past, if they saw it was a girl in China, they would terminate the pregnancy because they wanted a boy. I think they made that illegal in like India, and now China's gotten rid of the one-child policy because there's a new research study that shows there are 30 million less women in China than there are men. So 30 million is a lot too. Like there's these, I guess when they started doing it in the 1980s or 1990s, when they were able to see it's a girl and they're like, all right, get rid of that because you won't inherit the property. I think that's where it came from. It didn't notice the problem then, but every year, if you're like 2 million births behind for 15 years, that's 30 million less women. They say India, there's a huge article on this last year or 2 years ago. India is about 40 million women behind. So they're finding, now actually it's more valuable, I think, to have a woman, like they sometimes go for passing on property or passing on like inheritance. There's so few women that like it's the pendulum swinging back again. So it goes like too many men, too many women, kind of back and forth. Hello.
It's not my fault.
Uh-oh.
It's IT fault, I promise.
It happens, doesn't it? Well, luckily we are all on film on YouTube Live. We were just talking about prenatal stuff and what's IT doing?
I can't get in that D2L stuff, so they're trying to help me with that. But it took me like an hour to see somebody by the time I saw somebody and I had class.
That sounds about right. Well, that's why I filmed them all and you guys get you on D2L. Can you get in now?
No, I gotta go back. I gotta go back.
Okay. That's fine. So when you are pregnant though, they do the ultrasound. Have you guys ever seen like they put the gel on and like kind of like show the baby in there? And gosh, I probably have an old video of that too. If I search my Google photos. There's a few things that, you'll want to be tested for. So one is alpha fetoprotein blood screening and neocentresis. You don't have to memorize these, obviously. If you go into the medical field, maybe, but chronic villus sample. Also, timing and safety of administration of these different tests is important. So like when you're 35, they do it more often. My wife is considered a high-risk pregnancy, so they would give her like every 2-3 weeks you have to go in and they'd like check the baby and make sure it's okay. Because when you're old, your body breaks down and it's harder to have a baby. Non-invasive testing based on the cell-free DNA analysis, and then some ethical dilemma, which we talked about before, if the baby has a major birth defect. There are some states making it to where that isn't so much a choice. Other birth complications like anoxia and the potential causes, meconium, I think that's it, meconium aspiration and potential respiratory complications. So that's if they breathe in the fluid. Like if there's like waste product in the fluid that the baby's in the sac, that can cause challenges. Also, perinatal difficulties such as the cord wrapped around the neck. So that happens sometimes, and that's when they'll do like a C-section to get the baby out quickly if the cord's in a knot or if it's wrapped around the neck. And then prolonged labor can also hurt the women. So if you had a high-risk infant, one of them is low birth weight, which is less than 5 pounds. How much did they say that baby on the video was that we just watched? 2?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's definitely, like your lungs aren't fully developed. You're addicted to heroin and, the baby could be birth defected. Also, intrauterine growth retardation. So that's like prenatal deprivation that retards the growth, and then increased risk for developmental disabilities if you have those. So as a social worker, we want to support the family, support the child and the parents. other consequences. I'm not watching this, but I'm it is 3:18. Dang.
I told you I was really late.
It's okay, because it's so hot. I'm trying to finish this up quickly so you can like watch it online. I'll try to send some.
Is it on the D2L thing? See, that's why-
But it's on YouTube, so I mean, if you just go to my channel, or I can. Do you get the emails that I send out to everybody? Are all of you guys having this problem with D2L? I know some had it at first. So trying to see, because I want to stop us at the proper stopping point for next class and get into the first major assignment, which is the genogram. So, and if you're adopted, it's okay to use your adoptive family in the same way. But essentially, as a social worker, we're looking back on like 3 generations. So like, say your grandparents, you then have your parents. Oh yeah, I kind of drew that one wrong. So usually it's like a square is female and a circle is male. It depends on whatever you want to make it. But like you got grandma and grandpa, then you got the sets of parents, and then I have, actually I'm going to go ahead and draw mine because I'm the middle child. I forget which one I said was male, but we had girl 71, boy 75. I was born in 78. My brother was born in 1980. And my mom was pissed at having too many boys at that point, so somehow she got a girl in 1986. So that's our family. My mom actually came from 4 boys and 4 girls, so I don't even, if I was to draw all of them, 2, 3, there's already one. Which one is that? My dad came from 4 girls and 2 boys. Now I'm forgetting which one I made boy and girl, but we'll say.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Was it typical for that time to have so many babies in America? Is it like...
We have a negative birth rate right now. Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, like in that time you must have like 7, 6, 8 children, yes?
You mean over the 20-year span?
Yeah, when you were a child, your parents and all the rest had like a lot of children, yes? And
Yep, this is 15 years right here.
Mhm.
So 1971 to 1986.
Was it easier to raise children? Like I don't think so, but why so many?
It was cheaper, I think.
Cheaper?
I think it was cheaper. I don't know. Do any of you guys have big families?
My family ain't big. It's just like, nah, it's
I
not big.
mean, it's like, my mom, she was, like, it was 5 of them, but it was only 2 of us, so.
The average is 2, really it's 1.6.
Yeah.
So most people have a boy and a girl, and in Europe it's even lower. It's 1.2. So they have a negative birth cycle. Every 2 people give birth to one, not even 2 people.
I think it has to do with like the timing, like when you think about it, our grandparents, before them, the women were at home and they would come home and they would just have the babies. Whereas
Nothing
like,
to do than to have babies.
right, it's
Right.
like,
Right.
towards the 80s and up, like women were independent, were getting jobs and stuff. I don't have time for 3, 4, 5, 6 kids.
Right. And some had their career first and then would have the babies like second. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So that's what I think a lot of, well, I even did it, but like a lot of the girls that were my age, they had kids. Heather Mitz was in my class. She's the gold medalist from the U.S. soccer team in 2000, 2004, and 2008. She had her kids in 2017, 2016, and 2015. So when she was 38, 39, and 40, she had her kids. So most people would have their career first and then have the kids last. But we've only had 2. My brother has 2. My sister has 3. My other brother has 2. And my other sister has 3. Is that answering any of your question?
Yes, it's like going twice less, like 8, 4, 3, like 2, 1, and so on and so forth.
Also, in the 80s, you could live off of one single income. Like one person could work in the family and somebody could stay home with the kids. It could be the man or the woman, but there also is research that shows women had gotten paid less. And now you have to have 2.5 to 3.5 jobs to pay for a family. I swear to God. I don't know how else to describe it. Like you need, because of inflation, because of the monetary system and the corporations and whatnot, you need 3 different jobs.
For 2 people.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really hard to pay, even with like government support and stuff. And they don't support you on like good stuff. They'll give you food, water, shelter, and that's about it. Maybe a phone with like text messaging. But
Survival needs.
right. Yeah. They'll keep you alive, but they're not going to send you on vacation. I don't know. What do you guys think? Why do you think we've had less children in the past several?
You can't afford it.
Mhm. Also, abortion became legal in 1973.
I think it's about to be. I don't think it's legal anymore.
In some states, you're right. Like there's limitations. Like you can't have it up to the 3rd term. Like in New York, actually, if a baby survives an abortion, there's different laws that they're passing. But yeah, I don't know how to answer the question though. It's just like for real, like expensive. There's kind of there has been a definite shift to say the least. Because yeah, 6, 8, 5, and then 3 and 2 for like my brother. So they've all had. This is like my little sister. She's got a boy and 2 girls. I forget which one I made a boy and a girl, but label them on your paper when you do it. My sister, she has actually a niece born in 97. My other niece was born in 2000. And then my godson was born in 2004. My brother couldn't have kids, so they adopted a boy and a girl. Or I'm sorry, 2 girls. My other brother adopted one and had another. And then, well, that was me. I had a boy and a girl, and then this is my other brother. He adopted one and had one. So we had alcoholism that ran on both sides of the family. So that's kind of the German and Irish heritage we had. That's something to keep in mind. Also, bipolar disorder. So you can label that. You can also label, people keep track of divorces. Like, I forget how they, kind of like this. I would say every single, except for my mom, 4 brothers and 3 sisters were all divorced. Actually, just 3 of her brothers. So 3 brothers and 3 sisters were all divorced. And then my mom's oldest brother, not divorced, my mom, they've been married 52 years now.
I'm not getting a divorce. That's too much money.
Heck yeah, it
We
is.
separate. So I get a divorce.
But you're right. So it shows a trend. You know what I mean? Like, what, and if you're working with that social work client, it shows you that like that's kind of what's normal in her family. You know what I mean? Like that's what
I don't want to get married because everybody in my family got divorced.
right. Right. Alcoholism, mental illness. Okay, finishing college degrees. So like my dad actually did finish college. I think my mom was like 1. So you have, there's like software in Word that shows you the genogram, and I can try to look that up for you guys next class. But like you can draw it and then just take a picture of it. Some people prefer to do that, or you can use the pretty software. And this is what you'll do with your clients. So when you work with clients as a social worker, you'll find out their whole background and then why something may be sticking out into their challenges in life. Why
Is this yours or is this just like an example? Like,
this is mine. That's the easiest example to remember. But
so
yeah.
if everybody in your family got divorced,
On my mom's,
what made you want to get married?
on my mom's side. So it's my mom's the only one who did it. I think she's this one. I thought she was. So like, yeah, my mom's brother, sister, I still did want to actually have a family and like raise some kids, which I know you don't have to be married to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I could, especially with men, you can go spread your seed far and wide, but I chose not to. You know what I mean? Like I chose to stick with one woman and
That's fair.
what's that?
But keep your seed here.
Right, yeah, keep the apple close to the tree or not far from the tree or whatever they. So yeah, I guess my parents showed a good enough examples. They fight like cats and dogs, but they keep it together.
That's not my parents.
Right. They like at the end of the day, they like get it together. And so like we also got to unlearn communication patterns of like yelling at the kids, which we're still trying to unlearn, like trying to show our kid what to do instead of saying like, don't do that, like jumping on them. So like relearning communication methods, knowing that we have a history of alcoholism and addiction and not tampering with heroin and alcohol, like, as I know once I start, I probably won't stop because that's like our family genetic where we'll be blacked out and getting arrested and locked up. So like knowing that stuff about yourself and knowing that your family history with your client, letting them be informed of their family history that like, they're like, why can't I just go out to the bar and have a few drinks with the guys? Well, you come home blacked out every single night with 12 beers down and get a DUI. You have the genetics for that, or you have like a history of like driving home drunk. You don't want to drink at a bar. So just knowing that type of stuff, knowing also heart disease, strokes, cancer, those things you can also label in the family, knowing that background. So this is just an example. They may erase it by the next time we come in here, but I at least wanted to get started with that. The genetics, that we come into. Soon we'll get into nature versus nurture because they say, you're predetermined to be what you are based off your genetics. And some people are like, no, based on the way that you were raised, that's what predetermines you to be a good person or like highly educated or to get a good job. And some say it's a mixture of both. There's that debate that goes on forever. Like, I'm not bound to be an alcoholic just because I had family history of that. And because I hang out with a lot of people who drink every single day in college doesn't mean I'll be bound to go there either. But there's definitely some science behind both nature and nurture here. So I did want to stop here for questions so we know where to. Oh yeah, this is kind of cool though for the next time. The baby can hear you at like 20 weeks, or I'm sorry, 26. They can hear the mom's voice at birth because they heard it. Emotions affect the fetus. So like depression, anxiety, like I mentioned, if you're like stressed, that gets passed on to the fetus. If you're in a stressful environment, things that you eat are important. So we'll go through this one again next time. But like babies actually usually sleep when you're awake and then they're awake when you're sleeping. So that's annoying because then you can't sleep. Like this kicking and stuff. She's like, feel this damn thing kicking me again. It's kind of funny.
I be talking to people's stomachs when I first found out they're pregnant. Like they probably be a week or two and I still talk to them.
Yeah. You talk to their belly button like, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll go through that. Any questions about this now? Because
You said 20 weeks they can't hear you?
it says 26. But it could be 20. Those are like the tests. 26 responds to sound, vibration, and then demonstrates.
So that's like 5 to 6 months. They can't hear you until they 5 to 6 months?
They probably can hear you before that, but they say responds to sound, vibration.
That is crazy.
I'd say they can hear you though. Spiritually, you can always be heard, I think.
That's a party.
Right. So we'll dig more into this because this can go deep layers. That's why I even shown you guys. I know it's hopefully that was good information for you on the Creighton Method, but that was just like shocking to me because I didn't know all that stuff about like the mucus and whatnot. Like how men are always fertile and women are fertile 24 hours and that's it. But because sperm can live 3 to 5 days, there's 5 days you can get pregnant through the month.
That's so unfortunate.
Right. So depending on if you want a child, there's 5 days to watch out for, or if you don't want a child, there's 25 days to not watch, or however you describe it. So it's good information. And then also, is that Dr. Fauci? For some reason that's why I can't see it. It's all over here. I'm like, where is my screen? It's over here. But yeah, the Creighton Method was something I wanted to show you guys because that is, the breakdown of the, that's hilarious. I wanted to show you some baby pictures too, though, but I'll have to get them organized before I dig into them because it's hard to, these freaking Google photos, you never can find your stuff that you need to. So that's all that I have for today, though, unless if you had some questions.
My question is kind of off topic. It's about your family. So you said your brother or his girlfriend couldn't have kids, so they adopted 2 kids, and then your other sibling adopted. Did they adopt on purpose so the other two wouldn't feel?
Oh no. So my little brother married a woman who already had